Welcome to the Dr. Broadway Podcast, the musical theater history podcast where a couple of doctors sit around and talk about Broadway. I'm your co-host, Dr. Kristin Stultz Pressley, joined as always by Dr. Tracey Brent-Chessum, and today is the day. We are completing season, or should we say semester 2
yes,
of the Dr. Broadway Podcast, which means winter break is at last.
Is upon us.
Thank you, Santa. Thank you, God. Thank you, whomever it is that gives this stretch of time to us, because I think we all need it.
Sometimes I think the Brits have a much better way of doing this,
yes,
where they have little, like, actual chunks of time.
They do.
Smaller chunks, like 2 weeks rather than 3 or whatever.
Yep.
But my goodness, when you get to the end of this, these semesters, it's just like, I just need to sit here for a couple of days and do nothing.
I know. I want to sit down and watch TV at night without a laptop on my lap.
Yes.
You know, plugging in notes or researching something or, you know, just something. Yeah.
100% agree. So the last one.
Yeah, to get us over the finish line. What's it going to be?
The last of our all original Micromester. So this one is a favorite of mine, but we're doing the musical Six, which premieres on Broadway in 2021. You'll have heard us talk about Six as like 90 minutes, no intermission is our favorite thing.
Which our favorite. It's our favorite.
But also, Six is the musical, you know, it as far as Broadway's and as far as Tonys are concerned, it's a 2021 musical, but it was slated to open on the 12th of March.
That's right.
In 2020 and was shut down 3 days before? Was it the 9th of...
Actually, I believe, if I'm not misremembering, I remember this from when I spoke about this most recently, but it's been a couple of years, so I may be off. But I believe Lucy Moss, who's one of the writers of the show, tells the story that she was in a cab on her way to opening night festivities. It was literally opening night when she gets the edict from... who was the mayor of New York at the time? Was it Eric Adams then?
No, it wasn't.
It was somebody else.
It was the guy before him.
Whoever was the mayor of New York.
That said everything shuts down.
Everything shuts down. She gets the text on her phone or email or whatever on her phone in a cab on her way to opening night for Six. And she's thinking, how does this impact us? Of course, having no idea how it impacts them.
Yeah.
And how it impacted the whole world for the next, foreseeable future.
Well, my wife, Caroline, turned 30... on March 5th, 2020. And so as part of her 30th birthday, we all gathered in New York. So she didn't know where she was going. I surprised her that morning. We went there and she thought it was just going to be the two of us going away for the weekend. And we got there and our two best friends, greeted her in Times Square and on her birthday. And then we saw Six. That night on the 5th. And then, went out to, the Rainbow Room on top of the...
Fancy!
Yeah, the NBC studios. And her entire family was there, cousins, everybody.
So
I mean,
awesome.
It's a great memory, but what makes it so funny is that we spent 3 days there right before the world shut down.
Right.
Not really understanding what was going on. And then we, get home and everything starts to shut down.
Yeah.
Like down, I mean, everything. And then we started getting information that one of the ushers at Six had gotten sick the week before. So while we were there, he was there.
Yeah.
And he had COVID. And it was just like, so, I mean, Six has a special place in my heart only because I was like, Six was the one we were worried about and why I had to go get tested. And, because of course I got the sniffles as soon as we got home and I was like, I'm dying. I have COVID. Right. I was at Six and
at least you got to be with Caroline on her 30th birthday.
At least that's it. Cause I'm going to die now in Pittsburgh. And
you had one last hurrah.
Did I just tell you this or did I tell you on the podcast? Like I had to call and be like, I'm sick and I'm worried that it's COVID. And my primary care physician called me first of all. And I'm like, this is not something that happens.
No.
And he's
No.
why are you worried about this? And I was like, I was just in New York City. And they go, that's why they flagged me. Okay, so what were you doing? And I went, I was seeing Broadway shows. And he laughed, and then he said, yeah, we're going to need to get you tested because was way too many people around you. And, you know.
And this was a time when you couldn't just go to Walgreens and buy a, $30 at-home test kit.
There was like one testing facility in Pittsburgh. So, I mean, guys, this was like maybe the 15th. This is like March 15th.
Yeah.
I had to go down to the one testing facility. As soon as you got there, everybody is in a hazmat suit with their own air supply.
Yes.
And I'm like walking in there like, oh, this is out of a dream. Like, it was one of the things that told me.
This is an episode of NCIS.
Yeah, I was like, oh no. I mean, it was like in this building that was like used to be like an after hospital care facility, but like had been shut down, and they made it just into the COVID testing.
Oh yeah.
It was surreal. The most surreal thing I think I've ever done.
I bet it was.
And just remember, I was like, well, if I didn't have it before, I obviously have it now because I'm the only one in here that doesn't have like protective gear on with all of these people, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Wow. It was very crazy.
Well, so you said this is one of your favorites, and we know that part of that is because of it's 90 minutes, no intermission.
Yeah.
What else about it obviously you have that memory attached to it, but what else about it makes you love it?
The history buff in me.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Very
so
cool.
Six, if you don't know, Six is the story of the 6 wives of Henry VIII. Mm-hmm. Each are cast as like a different pop singer with a different style, and that is always fun to kind of figure out the different homages to different things. And every time I listen to the soundtrack or talk to people around me, it's fun to know what I don't get, the references I don't get that the younger generation gets, and they're able to school me on that one. And so this has been a wonderful training tool too, because as I, the students laugh that I can pick so much. They're like, is there really that much going on in Oklahoma? Really? That you can talk about Oklahoma for that long? They're like, is this really? Because it's like, it's not that it's like, this is illogical. It's just like, I just thought this was fun, when they're having to study it for the first time. And that's always the thing that ended up in like the end of the year gag reels. It's like, is there really this much in Oklahoma? Yeah. But at this point, it's, I was able to kind of turn it around on its head, and now I've got kids who are like, oh, you're totally missing the point of this, because this happened with this pop star that I would never have gotten culturally.
Yeah, no, same.
So I'm like, is this really in there? Are you just making that up? I like to turn it back at them. So, but I mean, I love anything that's based in history that will bring history to life in a new way. Yes, I love to laugh, but I also just love watching how people would translate, historical moments for a new generation. I just think that it's fascinating, and that's just the weird history buff in me. So
well, and this one has a very unique path to Broadway too. It's very
this
atypical.
Is the underdog one.
Yes,
it's not like Hamilton, which the moment Lynn starts going, we're like, ooh, that's going to be good because it's Lynn. These are kiddos.
Who just are like. They think they're going to do this little project for the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and then they're going to get back to their real lives. Like they have no expectation that it's going to become what it eventually became.
Exactly, and I love those stories.
Yeah,
and I want to support those stories because that's
And social media also plays a huge role in the explosion. Mm-hmm. I mean, they had like 100 million streams on Spotify and Apple Music before they ever hit Broadway.
Yeah, and it's like I want to. The fringe festivals are so necessary for development of theater. And, if you've never been to a fringe festival, go check it out. Go see if you can kind of figure it out. It was a big part of my life and my growth and development. We took little musicals to fringe festivals all over the country just because, people were willing to take a chance on something new, and we're having a good time doing it. And so, the fringe, which starts like the starts in Edinburgh, kind of as that theater festival, then kind of translates into fringe festivals all over the world. And there's probably one in your city now.
Probably.
So, obviously, like, you can kind of get the handbook on whatever fringe festival you're going to, and kind of you get to pick and choose what you think you would like and not like. And usually they're pretty good about telling you about content, but it's yet another kind of one of those structures of theater that we forget about that, I want to still support, because it's hard to maintain those. So,
yeah, anyway. For sure. And it gives a platform for people who would not have any other way to have a platform.
Exactly.
And and sometimes you get one of the hottest tickets on Broadway.
Yes.
If, when you give a platform to those people. So that's very important.
That's true.
So today we're going to talk about Six and how it was developed by its creators, Toby Marlowe and Lucy Moss, who met as friends at Cambridge University.
And we probably should say right now, we have been unable to track down what Toby Marlowe's pronouns, what they consider their pronouns.
Yes.
We have seen conflicting evidence of this.
Yes.
Lots of kind of the major newspapers are going with he, him, but yet the fan sites go with they, them.
That's
and haven't been able to track down a specific moment where Toby tells us for themselves. So we are going to be as respectful as we possibly can, but know that this was just, we actually spent some time
I did. Yes,
going through and trying to be like, where can we get them telling us what their pronouns are? So we're trying to kind of use the safe option there and make sure that we are being respectful, but we are unsure.
That's right. So. And the intent is never, ever, ever to be disrespectful or to disregard Toby's wishes. It's just, I found, in the New York Times, it's he, him, but some of those articles were written in 2018 when we hadn't yet had the conversation, about pronouns and things like that. So I'm going to, as much as I can, Tracey and I are going to try to stick with first names just to kind of take the whole question out of the equation. And we ask for your forbearance if we, which will probably mean me, misspeak because the intent is not at all to offend.
Yeah.
All right. So this starts at Cambridge, like I already said, Toby Marlowe and
Lucy right now,
Moss.
Both of these people are very smart.
Yeah, y'all, exactly.
Cambridge is not somewhere you just walk into. It's somewhere you you have to be good. It's really hard to get into Cambridge and Oxford. Like, those are the only ones we know about, but it is not easy.
Yeah. Yep. So it would be the equivalent of an Ivy League school here in the U.S. Harvard, definitely. Princeton, Yale. These are not just places that you show up in, unless you're Elle Woods in Legally Blonde. These are not places you just show up and attend. So these two folks, Toby is studying English literature, Lucy is studying history, and though neither one of them were studying theater per se, they both said that they were attracted to Cambridge because of its student-run theater community. And in fact, that's exactly how they met. They met their freshman year when Lucy was directing a play and Toby was in the audience. And Toby was absolutely blown away by what Lucy had done with her direction of this play. And later Toby sees Lucy in the lobby of a bank and in the lobby of the bank, and Toby absolutely fangirls all over Lucy, and the relationship is born. So the next time Lucy directs a play, again, just a student-run theater community that comes out of Cambridge, the next time Lucy directs a play, Toby auditions and he gets a role. And, it's kind of from there on, they're very, very close. They've both been involved in theater throughout their lives. Lucy had been more of a dancer for years, and Toby had been involved in theater, strictly theater. So, like I said, that's why they were both attracted to Cambridge, because though they weren't in the theater department, they knew that they would be able to practice theater.
Yeah, and it's set up very, very different in...
How so?
In Britain, when you kind of look about... yes, you can study musical theater. Yes, you can read musical theater. You can read, you can major in all of these different things. But a good, huge part of their culture is being kind of a man or woman of letters, right? Like being able to say.
That's right.
And so a large part of their secondary education is based in that too. So yes, lots of them play sport. They're very involved in sport. They're also very involved in literature and poetry and theater and everything. So people are getting a different kind of education. It's not something you can choose to do or not choose to do. So when you get to Cambridge, it's not really, I mean, I suppose you can read drama at Cambridge, but notice what they're doing. They're, reading English literature and history. And
that's right.
That again is different too. It's not necessarily one prescribed course of study. It's okay, you're meeting with your tutor and they are self kind of directing what they're looking at. And there's a lot that can fall under the guise of history and literature. So one of the things about both Oxford and Cambridge is they do have lots of these student-run companies. It's not like there's a faculty member who's like, this is the show. It's not like we do in universities today. It's very, very student-run, and it's very, very much building upon kind of that tradition they have in the secondary schools, too. So this is also yet another kind of great example. It wasn't like they were in a class together. It was just like, oh, of course everybody goes to see the student shows.
Right. Yep.
It's a different part. It's one of those kind of cultural parts that does not translate.
Yeah.
Like to us
I wasn't aware of that.
Because we are very sport focused.
That's right. Yeah.
And they are more, their education is more built to be a little bit more well-rounded. Right. Sorry, but it is.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, they have a very close friendship. They're working together in theater, and they're very, very close. And in fall of 2016, Toby, who remember is studying English literature, is given a chance to write a show for the 2017 Edinburgh Fringe Festival. And like Tracey already said at the open of the show, Edinburgh is kind of the granddaddy or grandmama of all of these arts festivals. It's in fact the world's largest performance arts festival, and it's held every year in Edinburgh in the summer. It spans about a month of performances. In fact, in the year that this show premiered, that Six premiered there in 2017, I think there was something like 34 or 3,800 performances over the span of the month. But this was a festival that was developed in 1947, so it's long-standing. And in 2019, so a couple years after Six, it had more than 59,600 performances of 3,841 different shows in 322 venues. Now, when I say venues, I am not talking Gershwin Theater. Right.
Fringe venues can be basements.
That's right. Or a sidewalk. Or a stairwell. It's kind of an anything goes sort of situation. But if you look, and you can find them on YouTube at clips of this show when it premiered at the Edinburgh Fringe, it happens on, a stage that's built on scaffolding and happens, on a street. Basically. So these are not like sit down, get a program sort of performances.
It's just to like show up and watch great art kind of feel. It's called the Fringe Festival because Edinburgh has its own festival in the summer, kind of to celebrate, I think it's not independence, but it's their cultural heritage kind of festival. But it always shows off. It has something called the Edinburgh Tattoo at Edinburgh Castle, which is all the massed pipe bands and everything, which is amazing to watch. But it basically brings together lots about their cultural heritage, and then it ends in a big fireworks display and everything. I mean, it's really kind of cool. And somebody in 1947 was like, why don't we have any performances other than just the bagpipes? I'm sure we do more than that. So they're like, looking at it and going, this is not the Edinburgh Festival. This is on the Fringe.
That's it.
And that's why all of these things are called the Fringe Festival.
Interesting. I did not know that.
I've done the Hollywood Fringe and Capitol Fringe. But at Capitol Fringe, we were in, we performed in like a cabaret space, and then we performed in an art gallery, and we performed in, it's just like just insane.
Yeah.
Like the places that you would end up. It's not, it's obviously not Broadway. It's just like a whole bunch of kids in a basement playing together and putting on a show. Like, this is what the Fringe festivals often feel like.
Well, and another thing to point out is that 6 at the Fringe was not 90 minutes to intermission. It was like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? It was
it's
like
not
a 20
meant
minute.
To be long.
No, there's snippets. That's why you can have 59,000 performances of almost 4,000 different shows over the course of a month, because they're just little snippets, right? They're not full, 2.5 hour with an intermission shows.
Yeah. And you don't want to do those at Fringe, because then you often get kicked out because they don't have enough room for you.
Right. And the mindset going into the Fringe is not, I'm going to sit and watch a show for 2.5 hours. It's kind of like a street festival in a lot of ways, where you're going to bounce from. In fact, one of the things that they talked about doing in the history of 6 is when they were at the Fringe, they papered the area, meaning they handed out little cards saying, come see our 20-minute snippet, right? Come see ours.
We did that too.
Yeah. So in the fall of 2016, Toby is given the chance to write something. Again, Toby has a writing background because of the English literature study. So Toby's wondering, what is it that I'm going to write, right? What am I going to tackle? And there were a couple of things that were off the table. One of those was a show where women just sang about how much they loved their men, or how much they
traditional American shows are off the table.
Exactly. We're not doing traditional American
We are not, no.
Right. And then because Toby had so many female friends, Lucy being one of them, but there were many others, Toby wanted to write a show that as many of those female friends could be a part of as possible, right? Because Toby was very aware of a lack of strong parts for those women. And that was very, very, very important. So Lucy, of course, I've already mentioned, is studying history at Cambridge. In fact, she was working on a senior paper about Busby Berkeley, the great film choreographer. Remember, Lucy's background is in dance, so it makes sense that she's going to focus her study in history on the work of Busby Berkeley.
That's what I mean by, like, this can be anything, y'all.
Yes.
This is not, I majored in history of America in the 1940s. This is, I'm looking at dance history.
Yeah, exactly. And so Lucy and Toby are talking about, Toby has this great opportunity. What can this become? And they're discussing different ideas, and they realize that you've got to make, in your show at the Fringe, you have to, because there's so many options, in order to get somebody to choose your show over the, 3,840 others, you have to have a gimmick. You got to have a gimmick.
You got to have a gimmick.
Think about the fact that Wicked is the Wizard of Oz told from a different perspective, right? That's kind of where their head is. What can we tell? A story that is well known, we tell it from a different perspective. Now, let me also point out right here, Hamilton's the hottest thing on Broadway at this moment in time. And what does Hamilton do? It tells American history from a different point of view, right? So I'm sure that part of that is, percolating in their minds too. How can we tell a well-known story in a different way? And they tossed around several different ideas, primarily from history or literature. Again, think of both of their backstories and what they were studying. So they were trying to think of something that hadn't yet been fictionalized. So they had ideas like the Real Housewives of Shakespeare, right? Where they're marrying, they're marrying Shakespearean women with this notion of what if we put them in the context of this very modern way of storytelling, which is, a reality show in which these women catfight, basically. So that was one idea. They thought about the musical backstory of the Witches of Macbeth,
which I still wish to see.
I know, I was about to say, that is a really good idea. But it was during a poetry class that Toby had an idea for a musical about the wives of Henry VIII. So Toby is sitting in this class, and later Toby was interviewed and said, because I'm super gay and I love pop stars, Toby thought I'm going to tell the story of these wives and put them in the context of a girl band, in a musical kind of American Idol sort of contest. And actually, there's a picture of Toby's notes that he's taking during this poetry class.
That's great.
And that is not at all related to poetry. Instead, Toby is thinking through, what am I going to do for this? And Toby writes in the notes, what if it's a pop concert and they could have like microphones? And then in all caps, Toby writes, need Lucy. So, now, at the same time that this poetry class is happening, Toby had been reading Antonia Fraser's The Wives of Henry VIII. And interestingly enough, Lucy was friends with Fraser's grandson. So there was a connection to that. And so Toby shares this idea with Lucy, and Lucy thinks, that's not necessarily a bad idea. It could be bad, but it could be really good. We just have to make it not bad. Now, again, Toby and Lucy are not trying to write a Broadway show. They are trying to write a 20-minute show for the Fringe and get on with their lives. Yeah, they are not thinking, this is my future. That's not what they're thinking.
It's also just like, as far as Fringe festivals are concerned, it's a bit of a contest, because what you want is you want to be sold out, because you want to get on that sold out board. Right. Because that then brings more people in there. So that's what you're looking to do based on kind of whatever venue you're in. Right. And they're doing the marketing ahead of time. So they're doing this backwards, right? Yeah. It's not starting with the story. It's like, what's the best, marketing shtick hook that we can do that can pull this. So, it's being created in a completely different way, which is why I think it's fun.
Yeah. So, they go on Christmas break, the two of them, and Toby continues reading this book about the wives of Henry VIII. Lucy, the historian of the two of them, is watching a documentary series called Six Wives, and it was through that documentary series that she's like, this is what I want to do, because she was already doing kind of feminist revisionist history as part of her school program anyway. So this really fit right into what Lucy wanted to do and had been doing. So it was a very comfortable spot for her. I'm sorry. Poor Kristin just is trying to get to the end of her thing.
That's okay. I have a question. Talking. Can you talk about what is feminist revisionist history?
Yeah.
Before somebody gets the wrong idea about it.
Yes. I would say call Stacey Wolf and she will explain it to you.
We've talked about Stacey Wolf.
Yes. She can tell you all about it. She's way better to answer that question than I am. You're way better to answer that question than I am.
And she is a lovely, lovely,
very
wonderful
very
scholar. Kind. And so helpful for those of us coming behind. She has been so helpful to me. Love her. But so feminist revisionist history is not, we are rewriting history to serve our purposes.
Right.
Because a lot of times that word revisionist to Americans means we're getting rid of the real history and writing it our own.
Writing our own.
And that is not necessarily what we're looking at here. Feminist revisionist history, those are buzzwords in our culture. They are not the same kind of buzzwords in British culture at this point. Basically, it means you're doing what we call history from below, where it's, I think we all know this. What I start all history classes with is that history is written by the victor. I think we can always, about, it's written by the most powerful person there. Like,
that's right.
You're not, so when you're doing history from below, you're taking that powerful archive, that most of the history that we would learn is based upon, and you're actually trying to tell the same story, but from the lowest person in society rather than from the top, and how it looks to them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
I think that's one of the things that is different. We're looking at, instead of, what's a good example? Oh gosh, I can think of these all day. It's just not right now, as usual. But it's just one of those things. It's not like somebody's trying to rewrite history. It's just trying to be like, okay, are we looking at all of the voices?
Let's look at it from a different perspective, basically, yeah.
Because the female perspective, I don't think you have to be a feminist to say that how wives looked on what their husbands were doing and how their husbands were casting their successes and failures. I think they might write it a different way because they have a different view on it, right? And they're more self-reflective in that way. Yeah. So I think that is that's part of it. I don't want anybody to leave here being like, oh, this is just a completely different retelling of it, and it's not based in history. I think there's great historical accuracy to this piece, but it is told through a different set of eyes.
Yeah,
and
it's
I think
amplifying
that's
a different voice. It's amplifying a different voice. Yeah, and that was absolutely the goal. So Toby and Lucy are set on this is what they're going to do. Yeah. They're going to, and it fits the bill. Remember, Toby wanted a show that his female friends could perform in. And Toby wanted a way to tell, amplify women's voices. And this is an unbelievable context to do that in, because we never hear from the wives of Henry VIII.
No.
We always hear what Henry thought, which was, I'm going to kick out the Catholic Church and start my own so that I can do my own thing.
Henry is controlling the narrative here.
Yeah.
And the people who are writing the history are afraid to go outside of that because lots of people end up beheaded.
Yes,
so
that's exactly
you have to remember, you're not getting the square deal here.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
They're doing this far ahead of the Fringe Festival. So the Fringe Festival happens in August.
Yes.
And so this is Christmas break, but they have to submit a title in order to get everything running. So what was that?
So that Toby, lets the society, the musical theater society that had allowed Toby the chance to do this. And so they exchange emails, and representatives of the society say, okay, we love your idea, run with it, great, Lucy's helping, awesome, we need a title. And the two of them had discussed a title. In fact, you can see some notes from their phone, just screen caps from their phones, where they've gone back and forth on a couple of titles. Those are available to see online. And they kept coming back to this title 6, but they thought it was too simple, right? It has to be more complicated than that. But they also knew,
marketing-wise, no one's going to go see that.
That's right. Because your title, you have to be able to know what the show is about, particularly in the Fringe. You've got so much competition that people had to be able to look at the title and know what this show was about in order to decide. There's
1,000 shows.
That's right.
Or 3,000 shows, or whatever it is.
Right. That's right.
You're not going to read the synopsis of each one.
No, you don't have time, right? You don't have the time to do it. And so they eventually went with 6: divorced, beheaded, live.
I love it.
Which is awesome, because immediately you see the divorced, beheaded.
Yes.
Okay, divorced, beheaded, that's Henry VIII. But the live captures that sort of, this is an American Idol, this is a Britain's Got Talent. This is, you know what I mean?
Yep.
It captures it.
This is a musical retelling of this.
That's right. It really summarizes exactly what they were trying to do. And so that's the title that Toby and Lucy send to the Fringe Festival. And then primarily over Easter break, they get to work and they write most of the songs. Again, this is not a 90-minute show. This is a 20-minute show. This is not meant to be their meal ticket for the rest of their careers. This is what we're doing right now. And then we're getting back to college, right?
Yeah.
We're going to graduate Cambridge. And so they spend a weekend writing the songs for this show. And like I said, some of the goals were to amplify women's voices. They wanted to show that women could be clever on stage without a man beside them. And you'll notice in at least the story as it's told now, there is not, it's women on that stage, and primarily, largely. So
never a man.
Yeah.
It's all women by design.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're trying to show that women can be clever without a man, but they're also trying to connect the female experience from 500 years ago to that of today, or ever how many hundreds of years ago, centuries ago that it's been, and say, you know what? There is common denominators. There are common denominators. There's a shared experience between what women are going through today and what women were going through then. And it's a brilliant thought. It's a brilliant thought, particularly when you consider it came from the heads of a couple of college students, right? I mean, it's incredibly, it's amazing that they were thinking so clearly about things that I don't know that necessarily I realized until I was much older. So, like I said, they thought this was a silly thing they would do. They would get back to their real lives. In fact, Lucy has said in interviews, I really thought this is so stupid. I need to be working on my paper about Busby Berkeley, but here I am working on this silly little show. Little did she know. But that was their frame of mind, right? Now, as they're writing, Tracey's already alluded to this. They're heavily influenced by pop singers, particularly female pop singers, and we'll talk more about that. Each wife is assigned the style of a pop singer or singers. And when you go in seeing the show, knowing the style of that, the style that inspired that particular wife's music, you're like, oh, I get that. So when I say Catherine of Aragon, the first wife, she is Beyonce. And you see that costume that she comes out in, and you hear the song that she sings, and you're like, oh, that is so Beyonce, right? That is so Beyonce. But each one of them, and I'll go ahead and go through it now. Why not? So, Catherine of Aragon is the first wife. She, if you know the show, you know she was married to him for the longest tenure, 24 years. But Catherine of Aragon is inspired by Beyonce, a little bit of J-Lo in there. Then we have Anne Boleyn, who is inspired by Avril Lavigne and Lily Allen and Miley Cyrus. So definitely a different vibe than Beyonce. And then Jane Seymour, very different. Adele, Celine Dion, Sia. I mean, these are very different styles. And then Anna of Cleves, who's inspired by Rihanna and Nicki Minaj. Catherine Howard, who's inspired by Britney Spears and Ariana Grande, and then Catherine Parr, and you could probably see the show and immediately identify this one, but just in case you can't, it's Alicia Keys who's inspired Catherine Parr, the sixth of the wives. So I think it's really helpful to know what was in Toby and Lucy's minds as they were creating each song for each wife. Because it comes through very, very clearly. Another thing that they were influenced by was the work of Amy Sherman Palladino, whose shows like Gilmore Girls and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel were iconic, at least in the U.S. zeitgeist at that, well, not Gilmore Girls in particular, but they were big fans of that. They were also big fans of Swedish songwriter Max Martin. If you want to know more about him, listen to our episode on Anne Juliet. But just a headline about Max Martin is there are 3 people who have had the most Billboard #1 hits of all time. One of them is Paul McCartney, one of them is John Lennon, and the third is Max Martin. So, you know, he wrote hits like Britney Spears' Hit Me Baby One More Time and Katy Perry's Teenage Dream. So they're very inspired by a very specific cultural moment.
Yeah.
And it comes through loud and clear when you see the show, right? So the show premieres at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in August of 2017, and it is really, really popular.
That title did it, y'all.
Yeah, that was the title.
Because if I was going through there, I would have been like, oh no, this is going to be good.
Yeah,
because you don't know what you're in for, but you're like, oh no, this is exactly why I've come to the Fringe.
And you know what? They were so smart to realize just 6 isn't going to do it.
No,
you know, just 6 won't do it. Now, when we get to Broadway and its other iterations pre-Broadway, it's different because then you've got marketing. You know, now we see the crown on top of the 6.
Yeah,
you know, and so it becomes a different thing. Word of mouth, social media, like I've already said, was a big part of spreading the story of 6, even before it was Broadway bound. So, you know, by then...
It hooks into the Fringe Festival stuff and then builds out from there. So they have this huge network before it's even going. So once they get the big marketers in there, a lot of the work has been done, and you can't change it a lot. Yeah, it's not necessarily called 6 Divorced, Beheaded, Live. Now that's the tagline. Yeah. Now it's just 6, right? Because we can do that. It's already got the groundswell behind it. But
that's right.
The marketing people, you don't have to do much here. It's how do we preserve what's there and then, you know, make it work for the wider audience. So
Yeah, so like I said, it's very popular at the Fringe in 2017. Toby's dad has a friend who's a composer, and that composer friend brought a friend, and that friend arranged for a limited run at a theater in London in 2017.
Yeah, that's how good it is.
That's how good it is.
My kid did something really, and it won the Fringe Festival or whatever it is. It didn't win, did it?
No, no, but it was still a hit.
But it was actually like one of the top 10 things that people were seeing that year,
it was
right?
very, very popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, so after they keep, with every iteration, it's a lot like Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, which starts out as a 15 to 20 minute cantata for a boys' school in London in like 1967 or something. Yeah. And then same thing with that one. There was a kid in the choir who was performing Joseph, and his dad was a reviewer and loved it. And writes a good review, and then, they keep adding to it and adding to it and adding to it until finally they have a full-length show. But that's what happens here. So they add a little bit for the London run in 2017. Then it returns to Edinburgh in 2018 in a different, it looks different. It sounds different. They've spent more time working on it. It does a summer tour running up to the Fringe. In 2018, an album is released of the music. And that's what picks up more than 100 million streams on Apple Music and Spotify. And it was at that point that the head of Norwegian Cruise Lines, of all things, that's what I say, it's a very unconventional route that it took to Broadway. The head of Norwegian Cruise Line sees it and asks about putting it on all of his ships. Yeah. So like if you're on a Norwegian cruise line, what you would have seen was the musical 6 on your cruise.
Because they were experimenting at that point. Yeah. And doing like big Broadway style musicals.
That's right. So that's right.
Instead of like stuff that they had like
a review.
Done in-house or reviews. Yeah.
Exactly. And so
they turned him down though, right?
No, it was on Norwegian Cruise Lines.
Oh, really?
It was, yeah. Yeah. It was.
And they still picked up the other runs. Well, good for them.
Yeah, it just immediately takes off.
There's a groundswell of people who love this.
Because it is so... But it's the same thing for Hamilton.
Yeah.
And Wicked. We love stories that we are familiar with being told from a different perspective. So, for those who winced when I said feminist revisionist, don't wince because... Yeah.
We love these.
That's right. That's right. It's not a scary thing.
Yeah.
It's not a scary thing.
It's just but this one is being kind of not bankrolled, but it's being lifted by the groundswell of people behind it. It's the grassroots efforts, right?
Yes.
This is not, they're making money with it, honestly, but they weren't thinking, oh, we need to go to Broadway first because, I would have looked at it at this point being like, well, there's no way to get to Broadway at this point.
Right.
So you're already on the cruise lines. Everybody's already seen it. But there's still such a love for it that it's like, nope, nope, nope. We want more. We want more.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me give you, I just Googled it while you were filling out that space. Yeah, like Norwegian Cruise Lines, it ran from late 2019 until early 2024. So it ran for 4 years on Norwegian Cruise Lines.
That's hilarious.
So running concurrently with its, Broadway life, we also have it's running on Norwegian Cruise Lines. And it's a very different kind of show than a typical cruise show, right?
But it's perfect for it.
It's so good. It's so good. So, they have a number of stops. There's multiple fringe arrangements of the show. The Norwegian Cruise Lines show. We have a long run in London that starts in early 2019. We have a production in Chicago that opens in May of 2019. And the thought is after Chicago in May of 2019, we'll go off Broadway. But the response in Chicago is so strong that they're like, wow, why would we go off Broadway if we can go on Broadway? And so that's exactly what they do. And that's what gets us to that opening night, March 12th, 2020, when Lucy Moss is in a cab on her way to the opening night festivities of her Broadway debut. And she gets a text from whoever. I can't remember who the mayor
I've heard this story before, but I don't remember.
I can't either. I should know this. It should be burned into our brains because we
There's
heard
a lot of shows, friends. Like, no. But I remember reading that it's like she got it was like, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah,
but I mean,
so eventually,
so this was running in previews, and that's when I saw it. I saw it in previews, but it was such a big name already. I had already heard it. I already knew the music.
Yeah.
And already knew that this was something we all wanted to see. And let me tell you, that theater on the 5th of March, 2020 was packed.
Yeah.
It was packed. And people were singing along. And people were like up on their feet. Yeah. There wasn't anyone in that theater going, well, there were some people who were like, what have I walked into?
Right.
But most of the time, it was the people like next to them being like, no, this is this. And they're all doing what we're doing right now, which is giving them the backstory. Right. Like, no, you're really going to love it. Here's what's happening.
Yep. So, obviously it doesn't open in 2020, but it's one of the first shows, not the first, but one of the first shows to open when Broadway kind of begins that slow roll back to life in the fall of 2020. It officially opens October 3rd, 2021. I think the first show back was like September 22nd or something like that. So this is not long
that's
after
like almost a year and a half at that point.
Yeah.
So during that time, and this
way
happened,
more than 2 weeks.
Yeah. And this is an interesting random point in here, is that because I don't know who the producing backers were at this point, but I don't think they were as established as,
I don't know either. That's a good point. But I will say
they had to let all of their cast go.
Yeah.
And then re-audition for a completely new cast. Now, if you know anything about kind of what happened during that time period, there were lots of people who were like, I can't come back to this because I'm doing something else now, or whatever, because it was just so random. It's like, okay, we can go back. Everybody go back, And then it was like, do we take that same cast or do we completely recast?
Right.
In this particular case, they had to actually like lay off everybody.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was because the producing arm is in Britain, and so they weren't able to get those, what were they called? PPE. Not PPE.
Oh, the
PPE was personal production equipment.
It was it was a PP something.
It was so the loans that you could get to keep people employed, to pay their if you'll keep the people employed, we'll give you money to back their salaries. And
that's right.
That is the only thing that kept the US afloat during that time. It was kind of, it was crazy because there's tons of people sitting at home. And a lot of people got that money. And were able to do that. But if they weren't a U.S. entity, they weren't able to do that. What I do know is that they recast completely from scratch.
Yeah.
And had to kind of remount. So they had to do it a second time. But even after the COVID and after putting all the money in to open the show once, they had to redo lots of extra money to redo it. But there was still such an audience for it, even at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is one of, not the first, because we hate that phrase, the first, like that word, because then it's very easy to disprove us, to disprove something if you say it's the first. But it was an early adapter of social media, where social media, it just exploded on social media. It exploded on Apple Music and Spotify. And so many people, by the time it finally premieres on Broadway, were at a frenzy to see it.
I want to see it because I know all the music and it's amazing. They knew it
backwards and forwards, and they wanted to see it. And so it opens on Broadway, and this little $5 million production, yes, I said $5 million production.
That makes sense.
With a small cast and hey, producers,
unit sets.
We may have just solved your problem.
Unit
90
set.
minutes, no intermission.
Yep. The entire band is
and a unit set.
Band is on stage. Small band. Band is on stage. The set doesn't change at all.
Yep.
They're doing a concert. Like
that's right.
That's what this. It is designed for Fringe.
Yes.
Like, you could do more with it, but why would you? It wouldn't work as well.
So what sells it is how clever it is and how specifically it speaks to this cultural moment.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So why would you screw with that? Just leave it alone. Mm-hmm. It's just perfect. So when it finally premieres October 3rd, 2021, it's nominated for 8 Tonys and wins 2. Best Original Score for Toby and Lucy, and Costume Design. And it's
those
now
costumes were pretty good.
They are awesome. They are awesome. It's now sitting at 1,730 performances, but I checked the box office, and it does seem to be losing some steam at the box office. We're seeing some, weeks where it's running at 56% or 61%, things like that. So we'll see what happens, but its running costs are so relatively low, I would imagine, that it's probably got some wiggle room. I would also imagine, I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine at $5 billion of capitalization, those investors have been paid back, and it's going gangbusters on the road. So maybe they can tread water for a while.
And remember, this is something that we're going to try to do a couple episodes on in the new year. The finances of Broadway are different in the U.S. versus in Britain. Britain gets a lot of puts a lot of government money into the development of work by British artists.
Yeah.
And so they may not have needed to pay back that entire $5 million.
Right.
Because I'm banking on the fact that part of that is government subsidies.
Yeah. Yep. So there you have it. That's the story of the development of Six, which is so much fun.
It really is great.
It is so much fun. It is such a good show.
And you never see Henry.
Nope, you don't.
Nope. It's just literally, and there's not like dialogue necessarily all the way through it. You get like the opening and the closing, then you get 6 different songs where they tell their own story their own way. And that is... It's very effective.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And so with that, we conclude season 2 of the Dr. Broadway podcast. Thank you to all of you who have joined us for all or any part of this ride. I want to give you a little preview, and we'll talk more about this when we come back from our long-awaited winter break. But what season 3 and the next couple of seasons beyond that will look like is something I'm super excited about. We're going to be going, like we've gone through all of the shows that are currently touring, or that were currently touring when I made the list of, or when I made the schedule. And I think there's a few that have come out, hit the road since then that we've missed. But for the most part, everything that's currently on tour, we should have an episode on. And now what we're going to tackle is a project that I have wanted to do for a really long time, which is to look year by year at each year's Best Musical Tony Award winner. So we'll kick that off with Kiss Me Kate by Cole Porter. Well, we probably will kick it off with just a discussion of what the Tonys are and why we have the Tonys and where the Tonys came from and how the Tonys have changed over time. And I imagine that will be our episode numero uno for season 3. And then we'll go year by year through the Best Musical Tony Award winners. So that will start with Kiss Me Kate, which is, one of the classics of the Great American musical era, right? That's the one of the golden age stalwarts is Kiss Me Kate. So we'll be doing that. That'll take us through. We're going to try to do, I think a season ends up looking like 2 decades. So it'll be like I think the first season is maybe the 50s and 60s. The Tonys start in the late 40s. So we'll kind of pin that extra episode in there. So because it's not a full decade, but like I think season 1 is the 50s and 60s, and then season 2 is the 70s and 80s, and season 3 is the 90s and 2000s, and then we'll get into the next. So this is a project that's going to take us a couple of years to complete, but I'm very excited to do it because some of these things that we've been able to hint at, just the changing tide of Broadway and the changing way of creating a show, we're really going to get a very clear picture of that as we look into year by year what is happening and do it chronologically. Yeah. So I'm really, really, really excited about this.
Kristin, I'm tired. Already.
I know. We need summer break.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right. But another thing that we're going to introduce, and Tracey, I'll let you speak about this. We're going to introduce something because we are professors. So we're going to have some special seminar episodes. And Tracey, tell us about the seminar episodes. What are those going to look like?
We're going to kind of tack those on at the end of January. We're going to do a couple seminar episodes, basically looking at things other than musical that are impacting it. One of the things we feel like we say over and over and over again is we talk about the economics of Broadway, and we give you a little snippet, a little smit. We wanted to bring some people together that can really kind of talk about, how a musical is financed and how it's different in London versus on Broadway itself. And what that looks like. We also talk a whole lot about, producers who are always saying, we don't have enough money, to pay everybody. We can't keep doing this, that kind of stuff. And looking at just what goes into paying an actor, for example, and where that money is going. Is it just going into their pocket, or is that, is it more complicated than it looks on the surface? So we wanted to bring some of those folks in. Kristin, you want to talk about some of the ones that you were looking at as well?
Yeah, and then also we've got authors. One of the things Tracey and I have talked about early on in the podcast is how when we were coming up as musical theater students of history, we didn't really have a whole lot of resources. There was not a big emphasis or any emphasis at all.
We had beautiful coffee table books.
Yes, we did.
But that's what they were. They were,
and they're still on my coffee table. I'll have you know.
But they were picture books, and you couldn't always trust the information.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. But there wasn't an emphasis or any emphasis at all on creating literature for and about the study of musical theater history. And that has changed. And that's a very good thing. And so books now are coming out at a breakneck pace. And so a couple of authors, one being David Armstrong, who wrote Broadway Nation, How Immigrant, Jewish, Queer, and Black Artists Invented the Broadway Musical. He'll be joining us at some point, as well as Barry Joseph, who wrote Matching Minds with Sondheim, The Puzzles and Games of the Broadway Legend. He'll be joining us. Sondheim, there was a moment in Sondheim's career. Sondheim, by the way, loved games and loved puzzles. And there was a time after the reception, very lackluster reception of Merrily We Roll Along, that Sondheim said, I'm quitting musical theater and I am going to just make up games and puzzles. And then,
he would have done a brilliant job.
That's right. And then, as fate would have it, he was approached by James Lapine, and they came up with the Pulitzer Prize winner, Sunday in the Park with George. So that fell apart. His career as a puzzle maker did not take off. But nevertheless, Barry Joseph examines the work of Stephen Sondheim and all of that, his passions, in that. So we'll be talking with those. We are open to talking to other authors. I mean, we want to make this a place where, in addition to our bread and butter episodes, which will continue to be the deep dives into shows, specifically the Best Musical Tony Award winners, we want to have conversations with other historians, with other specialists in musical theater, whether they're creators, historians, producer, whatever they may be. We're open to all of that. And so those seminar episodes will be kind of a broad umbrella where we can put those episodes that would be a little bit farther afield from our normal fodder, right?
Yeah.
From if it's not a Best Musical Tony Award winner, then we'll put it in a seminar episode, and we'll release those as we have them.
Yeah, which is going to be fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be a lot of work. So we better hibernate through this.
Yeah,
winter
now
break.
I got to go read some books.
I know, me too.
Because they just came to us in the mail. So.
They just came to us in the mail. So we have our homework. It never ends. It never ends.
It doesn't.
Even on winter break, we have our homework. All right, y'all, that'll do it for this episode of the Dr. Broadway podcast. This season, or should I say semester, of the Dr. Broadway podcast is officially on vacation. We'll be back after winter break and wish all of our listeners a very jolly holiday. If you miss us while we're gone, of course you can still connect with us via email at hello@drbroadway.com, and you can find out the exact details of our return via our social media channels, which of course are Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, where we are known, as you know, as @Dr. Bway Podcast. Merry Christmas, y'all, and happy holidays.